So let's start with the what. What am I going to talk about today? Obviously, the title implies that there's a certain element of design that I will be mentioning today. But what design? There's a lot of different kinds of design. Right now, we just heard about fashion design. We are familiar with product design, service design, experience design, interface design, industrial design, experience design. That just comes to my mind. And even organizational design. There's also all different types of design principles. But what I will talk about is about something different. What I'll be talking about is business design. So it's a different, a fresh look, and from my point of view, a must-have look in how we do businesses. Either as startups, as entrepreneurs, or CEOs of large corporations, it doesn't really matter because it's designed for all. Are you getting it right now? Just a little bit. It doesn't matter if you're a startup, a small startup, or a big multinational company. It's all the same. The business design principles applies to everybody. But in order to be able to explain it, I'm gonna not go through the specific, but I'm gonna try a different comparative approach to this. So when we say business, there's a concept that pretty much all of us understand, which is business planning. You do a business plan, there's a lot of revenues and profits, and then you know where you're gonna go, and you have the budgets and everything else. And right now I'm talking about something different, which is business design. It's actually pretty different. So I will compare the two in certain areas where they're really different. And in that sense, I'm attempting to explain what business design is. So one, in the planning approach, what happens is your company or your startup is at a point A, which is where you are right now. And you can clearly, somewhere out there on top of the mountain, there's a point B. And this is where you want to go. And you can clearly see your path because it's a linear path and you know exactly what's going to happen. You know what's on those slopes there, except for the fog. You know exactly where you're going to go. And it's all about the target. So you plan to reach that target. That's your success. Success is defined by effectively reaching your target. This is planning work. And if you can clearly see point B, actually this is a good way of working. With design, it's something slightly different. Design is not about the target, it's more about the journey. Because what you realize is you're here at some point in time today, and what you want to do, you want to create your own future. Because you cannot predict the future, because you're not Nostradamus. And it's impossible to predict the future. And there's all these cliche sayings about predicting the future, but one of my favorites is, if you want to predict the future, you better create it yourself. So this is the design idea. What you want to do is not reach a target, but take a journey, which is going to take you somewhere in the future, which you actually don't know what it's going to look like at the start. It's all about the journey itself. You don't have targets. You actually just walk the path and take the turns, overcome the hills, overcome the obstacles, but with a clear mind that you want to go somewhere. So you want to create this new future for yourself. This is pretty much the design methodology. This is what business design is as opposed to business planning. Another comparison is about the way you travel. So with planning, you are under the illusion that you have your foot planted really strong on solid ground. You're confident, you have a good stance, you can feel your weight, and you're actually driving a really nice Porsche on a perfect German highway, and nothing can stop you from reaching your target. Except running out of gas because you're driving a V8 Porsche, but you know where the gas station is, you can plan for that. And it's a perfect straight road, no problem whatsoever. This is business planning. But the matter of the fact is, just as the world is not all solid land, I mean the earth is 75% water, the business environments is not all solid and predictable either. Actually, your journey looks something more like this. You're on the ocean, and it's still waters right now, but you have no idea where and when the storm is going to hit you from. And the best you can do is be agile enough, be quick enough to navigate yourself through those running waters, still waters, and every different types of conditions you can see along the way. This is more about the design mentality. Another difference between the two is about what you are trying to do, what's the objective. So With planning, you start with a clearly defined challenge that you need to overcome. Now, the tricky question is, tricky words here are clearly defined. So you know exactly what's wrong, you know exactly what your target is, you know exactly what's the growth target your boss gave you as aligned with the budget. So it's a clearly defined thing. And for that clearly defined challenge, you try to find the one perfect solution. It's a linear solution which takes care of that challenge for you. Again, the important thing is it's clearly defined. But in the real world, actually, especially in today's world, the challenges are not so really clearly defined. And we call the challenges today wicked problems. And you cannot solve wicked problems with linear planning. You have to have a different mentality, which is the design mentality. Design mentality is all about looking at different stuff, taking all those insights, and not planning your way forward, but doing your way forward. Which is like you start doing something right away. You don't try to budget it. You don't try to plan it, because what do you have to plan against? It's a wicked problem. You cannot grab a handle on it. So what you have to do is you have to take small steps in order to solve that problem with the right tools, right skills, and the right mindset. And eventually you will get to not the solutions, but actually options. Planning is about going to a solution. Design is about creating options that are going to get you out of the wicked problems and into the new wicked problems that you're going to face later on. And with each methodology, you need a tool, right? With planning, the name implies the tool is the business plan. What's a business plan? It's a nutshell. It's a lot of assumptions that create your revenues, a lot of assumptions that create your costs, and it's the profit, the magic number, the profit. Or if it's a real financially strong business plan, you have your return on investments, net present values, and all that stuff. Which is really nice if you know exactly where you're going, if you have a linear path. But if you have that wicked problem, this tool doesn't really work for you, because you make 27 assumptions to create a business plan, and 2 days later, all those assumptions are proven wrong. So what do? You have to start all over again. And when I say all over again, I'm talking probably about a 40-page document. So this is not a suitable tool for business design. For business design, we use a tool called the business model canvas. Okay, the revenues and the costs are there in the business model canvas right here. And this is actually the biggest rule of business model canvases. This side, your revenues should be greater than or equal to your expenses. Obvious, right? Because a business has to make money at the end of the day. But this is all designed around value. So in design mentality, you ask, what is the value that I'm creating for my customers? What is the value that I'm creating for the people? And because it's business design, the next question is, how much money am I going to make out of selling this value? So this is the tool that we're using. It's not business planning, but it's a business model work. Now I have some bad news. I got a couple of bad news. Actually, the first bad news is not coming from me, but it's coming from a guy that I really like. Long story short, you cannot just give it a try. You have to commit to doing business design with your startups, in your companies, as a personal entrepreneur, in your life. You have to commit to learning and following the design mentality. What happens is, you have an idea, for example, and once you have the idea, you directly want to go to creating that idea or finding investment or something like that. But if you actually commit to the design methodologies, you have to take a step back and empathize with the intended customers of your ideas. So you cannot just use some parts of it and neglect the rest. You need to really learn it while doing it, but really commit to it. The second bad news is, you have to do it yourself. There's a lot of design agencies that create designs for companies, for entrepreneurs, for people. But actually, it's not possible to have a business design agency design a new business for you. It's possible that somebody design a new business against you, and actually those people are the entrepreneurs that are rocking and disrupting your industries. If you want to do business design, you have to do it yourself. You can get help from professionals, but at the end of the day, the person that has to do that new business, create that new business, has to be yourself. You cannot get other people to do it for you. Now, one piece of good news. Yeah, I said you have to commit, and I said you have to do it yourself, but all it takes is just to take the first step. Once you commit to it, and once you say you do it, all it takes is to take the first step, because it's step 1, 2, 3, 4 you have to follow, and you're done. It's as simple as that. It's simple to do. All you have to do is start. So what do you do when you start? What you do is, first, you need to understand what your wicked problem is. You need to understand what your current business model looks like. Or if you're a startup, if you're an entrepreneur, you need to understand what your initial idea looks like. How does that story sound to your ears? The business model canvas is also a storytelling tool. And the story you tell is the product you sell. If you haven't heard that, it's a really strong. You have to be able to tell a story with your business model. So look at your current business model. See where the story doesn't really add up. And now you look at your vision. Because you have to have a strong and common vision among your team to be able to make things happen. And also you look at the context that your business model needs to operate in. Stuff like technology, consumer trends, rules and regulation, uncertainties, economic factors, competitors. So you also have to look at the context that your business model is going to operate in. Your strategy cannot mean something in vacuum, in alone. So you have to compare it to the other factors that are affecting your strategy, affecting your business model. And the reason for this understanding is to get an idea of what your business design journey needs to create, needs to make sure for you to be able to say, hey, I'm successful. These are what we call the design criteria. So you do this to understand your current situation and get some design criteria which shapes what the new businesses are going to look like. Next step is innovation. And there are some innovation techniques. You do brainstormings, you do ideations, and you try to come up with new businesses, new business angles, options, because I said there's no one solution, you have to come up with options. There are two things that I want to say here. One, ideas on their own are not businesses. The ideas on their own are one parts of the business model, most probably. So a new option happens when different amount of ideas come together and create a solid, explainable story. So it's not about the ideas themselves, but it's more about the ideas that come together and create a really nice story. And in order to be able to do that, you cannot do this alone. You have to work with your team. If you're a startup, for example, get yourself some co-founders. If you don't have co-founders, go work with your friends. And maybe you're an awful person and nobody likes you, do it with your family. They owe it to you. But you cannot do this alone. The second one is, what you want to come up at the end of this stage is not ideas, but business model prototypes. On a napkin sketch level, using the business model canvas. Because design is all about prototyping. And you prototype so you can learn as much as possible. Which brings us to our next stage, which is validation. What you want to do in validation is get your options, look at the most important assumptions that you made during designing, and try to understand what needs to be true for your assumptions to be correct, and prove it to yourself. Because the initial sketch of a business idea is worthless. I mean, absolutely worthless, because it's just an idea and it's in your head. Okay, you gave it some more value by putting it on paper, but it starts getting value once you start acquiring learnings about it. And what I mean by learning, learn what your assumptions, learn about your assumptions and learn whether your assumptions are true or not. And if it's not the end of the world. What you have to do is take that learning and steer in another direction. That's why you have options. And the next step is implementing that validated learnings. So once you come to that stage, initially, let's say you started your journey with 8 options, you come to that stage and you have less number of options. And those new options are not a subset of the initial ones. Those are actually Frankenstein models of certain parts of different business models, different prototypes. Because on one side you validate something, on the other one you validate this, and you bring them together, something real nice comes up. This is what you implement. And after that, you became a Superman of business modeling, business design, and you just fly away with your successful business model. Now I'm talking superpowers here, and I'm saying stuff like how Frankenstein happens, some supernatural thing. What happens at the end of business design is actually truly magical, because you create a really viable solution to people's problems, which also enables you to become rich, make money. Maybe not rich initially, but at the end of the day, make money. So it creates some magic. But it is no sorcery. It's actually a well-defined process that gets you there. So it's magic via process. And once it's a process, that means that you can read about it, you can learn about it, you can start using it, follow it step by step, and the more you do, the more you become a master. It's like learning a new game. It's pretty much the same idea. So it's really good that we have a process that defines business design. Now our key takeaways. The key takeaways that I want you to get from today. Again, comparing business design and business planning. Number one, business design is about doing the right thing. It's about effectiveness, not doing things right. It's not about efficiency. So before you go try to make stuff more efficient, you first have to make sure that you are doing the right thing. So it's the initial step. Next, design is about exploring options, like I said earlier. It's not about finding single solutions to problems. There is no single solution to any of the current world's problems. In business, in humanitarian reasons, in whatever, in personal relations. There is no single solution. Design is all about exploring options. And design is all about searching for that right thing. It's not about execution. Execution is a different thing, and execution follows search. The first step is always search and learning. Design for all begins small. The process itself is sector agnostic. Okay, it makes sense that it applies to technology businesses more because you have more room for prototyping. But you see on the article here, it also applies to GE, one of the biggest industrial manufacturers in the world. It seems like it applies to startup world because startups are more agile. Yes, true, but it also applies to GE, again, one of the biggest companies in the world. The design methodology applies to all different kinds of organizations, from an individual level to a team level to a startup level to a company level to a holding level. Even at the government state level, it applies to everything. Now my message is finally, number one, design for people. Whatever you do, ask yourself the question, who am I creating the value for? Who is those people? Try to empathize with those people as much as possible. Number two, design for the future. Don't design for today. And lucky for us, the future is already out here. It's just fragmented in little pieces somewhere around in your world. It's not just organized in a neat way, brought to you on a silver platter, but it's already out there, and you have to design for that future. And design with a purpose. For people to be able to follow you, for you to be able to find the energy and perseverance enough to nail this business design journey, you have to have a clear purpose. Clear purpose enables you to have followers, customers following you, employees following you, entrepreneurs, investors following you. For people to be able to follow you, you have to have a clear, strong purpose. So design with purpose. And by the way, this is business model innovation.